Welcome everybody to the Start My Wellness podcast. We have a very interesting guest today. We're going to talk about a particular topic that I think affects a lot of people in our community. Kind of relationships, marriage, divorce is, it's a part of the world we live in, and we always have people who, this podcast is meant to help answer questions and provide some understanding of kind of sometimes complex ideas so people can be more informed, make better decisions, know who's a good resource to turn to if they have questions or things that they don't know how to address. And we do it once a month through this kind of informative sort of dialogue, and we invite the audience to participate. So, my name is Anton Babushkin. I run this company called Start My Wellness. We provide mental health services, and that could be medication, therapy, psychological testing. We try to be a good resource for helping people improve their lives, mental health, physical health. So that's the work that we do. Um, we have a very special guest, Alisa, if you could please say just a few words about, your professional background and kind of the work that you do.
Sure. I am a family law attorney, and I am actually going through a transition right now, shifting my practice from doing litigation along with collaborative divorce and mediation to only collaborative divorce and mediation. So, this is an excellent time for me to be joining your podcast because I think that it's educating people about their alternatives for how to go about getting divorced is so important. I've been doing collaborative divorce and mediation for about the last 15 to 20 years,
Mm.
but it's not been as popular as I believe it is gaining strength and getting more and more popular. But one of my missions with my practice is
Yeah.
to get the word out to help educate people. So I have a law firm that is called Transitions Legal.
Hmm.
We're located in Bloomfield Hills. And even with the litigation cases that we have taken on in the past and that we're currently working through, we approach it with a mediative mindset, which I like to say it was a philosophy of how I practiced family law so that people knew when they were coming to me that the point isn't to argue and become adversarial in court, but to really help my clients through compassionate decision making, to help them maintain their dignity through the divorce process, which, as you know, is such an emotional time period and very chaotic for people.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially because mental health in general, as a therapist, when you're saying make good decisions, take care of oneself, be a good communicator, those are things that resonate, I think, from my own vantage point. I can kind of hear some commonalities there. Um, Also, of course, Bill, if just say words about
Yeah,
a couple words.
sure.
We
Yeah,
co-host this podcast together.
sure. Thank you. So my name is Bill Bloom. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I come to the world of divorce issues chiefly through the eyes of the child. I'm a lifespan neuropsychologist, and I've worked with many children over the years whose parents are going through divorce or whose parents have been divorced. And I do generally psychological or neuropsychological evaluations to determine the state of the child in the process and to discern processes that are going on in the child that the child might not be able to verbalize
Mm.
because of the complexity of the issues, the developmental age of the child. For whatever reason, I try to bring clarity to the situation through the eyes of the child.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because, of course, the child, depending on their age or level of development or psychological functioning, the way they're going to understand, perceive, respond to, make sense of divorce, of what, collaborative or not collaborative is going to be very different. And there's a lot of understanding there that they need help with, usually, right? And also how they see it at different points of their lives. Like I've worked with many young people who maybe their parents got divorced at a certain age, they experienced or responded to it like in one way at age 7 and another way at age 10 and a different age at age 15 and 25, and how does it inform their identity and their development, their relationships? It's such an interesting, I mean, sometimes painful, but a very, very interesting dynamic of how all that plays out. So,
It
well,
just to add to that, Anton,
yeah,
it is so complex. I see that in my practice all of the time, and I'm so glad to add to my list of resources, Dr. Bloom, because even adult children, right? Even adult children are so affected by divorce, and people forget about that, especially many attorneys. They don't even
mm,
think about that. But
yeah,
One of the things that I think we all experience is when we ask somebody, either child, adult, even an older adult, about their life experiences, they will invariably talk about their parents' divorce, and they will know the exact age that they were when it happened. It's like my life was this way before they got divorced, and my life was this way after they got divorced. It's a very strong landmark for people
yeah,
in their lives. It has a lot of significance.
for sure. Sometimes they'll recount, like I've heard patients many times will say, have these like um, distinct memories. I was in this room. It was this time of year. My
Right,
parents came in from the kitchen. They started the
right.
conversation with, make these very kind of like, who knows how exactly accurate that is, but it captures the moment of how they remember and thought and experienced it, right?
Right.
Um, Lisa, I know this might be kind of a little bit kind of going back to basics, but I thought could you, in your professional experience, your perspective, just kind of give like our participants or our listeners a chance to think about like, okay, what is non-collaborative divorce, so to speak? Like, what does that
right.
look like, and
So
what are the intentions of this kind of more sort of thoughtful approach that you're describing?
the traditional model for divorce, which most people know about, I categorize as litigation. So that means it's court-based.
Mm,
Somebody files a petition or a complaint with the court, and then you're right from the start, under the auspices of the court. And it is structured, the divorce process in court is structured so that it's one parent against the other parent. It's not something necessarily that they're doing together. So people's mindset is adversarial.
mm,
If you look at a legal pleading, there's a V in the middle because it's versus, right? So it's, you know, it's mom versus dad, and that automatically sets people up to be adversarial as if they have completely different interests, which is not always the case. So you're under the jurisdiction of the court in the county in which you live, and your process is based on the court's guidelines. The court has certain deadlines that have to be met along the timeline.
hmm
And if there's a dispute between the parties because they don't agree on something, which of course you're not going to agree on everything because you're getting divorced, then the default is to file what's called a motion in court. So a judge can make a decision as to who's right or wrong, quote
hmm
unquote, right? So instead of the couple working through their disagreement together, they just throw it to a third party who knows nothing about their family. So that's the court process,
Sure.
where if that's how the court handles, or in the traditional model, if there's when the disputes arise between the couple who are getting divorced, and their attorneys are the ones who are arguing, right? It's all the messaging is through the attorneys.
Mm,
So who your attorney is makes a huge difference in your process and how long it might take or how many arguments there are. Um, Most attorneys, family law attorneys, will say that, of course, we try to work things out outside of court, but the training that an attorney has as to how to resolve disputes, even the words we use in talking to another attorney makes a difference in what the other attorney is hearing and how they hear it. Do they hear it antagonistically, or are they hearing it more in a way that is promoting working toward resolution while representing your client's interests? And most attorneys, I would say, in my experience, don't have that high level of training. That's a higher level of training that comes with training for collaborative divorce or training to become an insight mediator. These are things that can make a big difference in how even your court case can go.
It's really interesting. And if I could just ask you a question here, I mean, it seems like one of the key differentiators, well, one is how the person proceeds to, initiate the divorce or how all that unfolds. But it seems like one of the missing pieces maybe is, well, how much attunement and understanding of the other is there? From the attorneys, from the couple who's getting divorced, right? A lot of times, as therapists, one of our very difficult areas of work is kind of how much does the patient imagine and understand the experience of others, like empathy, understanding, not from a point of view of they shouldn't be assertive or have their own boundaries or have their own needs, but like that kind of attunement, understanding the mind, the experience, the subjective, what's going on for the other is so important in kind of personal growth. And I think that you're kind of, I feel like you're kind of describing an element of that, right? That the legal process that traditionally doesn't include maybe enough of that kind of consideration. Is that?
It definitely does not. And that is why I've continued my training, and really my latest training, which is in insight mediation, to become an insight mediator, applies the insight theory to mediation with couples who are divorcing, which I would say the cornerstone of that is the understanding, right? So I can be curious and help my client make sure that they understand what the other person is saying, right? So that's part of the work that I do, and I do it in the collaborative conference room too, which we'll get more into. But answering your question directly, it's not just repeating back what the other person said, which is how many of us were initially trained as mediators, but it's like, what do you understand from what your spouse is saying? And then asking the spouse, is that what you intended? Because, and you guys know, how often is that not what the person intended? So it's such a deep level of work to have the two people hear each other and find out if they're really understanding what the other person is intending.
It's interesting. Almost one maybe could almost say, if they're able to do that, maybe they shouldn't even get divorced because if they're able to, I mean, I'm being partially playful, but like if one is willing and able to commit those kind of helpful resources to really saying, what do you mean? What did they say? What did they have in mind? How do I understand that? How do I respond to that? That's a lovely, very, very thoughtful thing to do. One wishes we kind of did that all, that was just a part of our life, of course. It's hard to, it's not easy to do, but okay, that's very interesting.
Right. Well, it's not so that, and it is an opportunity for a divorcing couple to hear each other differently, which is why I think it makes a big difference for the future, what their relationship is going to be like in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that, and then in the collaborative model, the initiation and the whole process kind of starts off differently. Is that the idea? That you were kind of describing the sort of traditional model, I think, in a way, right?
Yeah. So in the collaborative law model, it is a legal process, another legal process that we can use to help people get divorced. And it's initiated by first being aware that it is available to you, either through your therapist or through a trained collaborative divorce attorney. And if both parties are aware of the process and come in knowing about the process, it's a much easier start. Then they've both talked to collaboratively trained attorneys, decided that this is what we want to do, and this is the way we want to go, and they hire collaboratively trained attorneys to initiate the process. Very often, I'm speaking with a potential client who's just exploring divorce and what are my options, and getting their spouse on board with the collaborative process is often a difficult step. If they've already talked to an attorney who is not collaboratively trained, who hasn't offered them options, it's harder to get them on board, because in order to do a real collaborative divorce according to the models that we have, we sign a participation agreement. We don't file in court at all. What we do instead is, each party being represented by a collaboratively trained attorney, we all sign a participation agreement. So everybody on the team. And I call it a team approach to divorce, because it includes the two trained attorneys and also a mental health professional who's been trained in collaborative divorce, and a financial neutral. And often we include a child specialist, who is another mental health professional, to be that voice of the child. So the child's not in the room, but that mental health professional has met with the children, can be that voice of the children in the room.
Right.
And by signing the participation agreement, we are agreeing to full transparency, and some of the protections that people feel they get in court, some orders that people get in court initially when they file, might be a status quo order. Well, the contract that we're signing, which is what the participation agreement is, it's contractual obligations of each party to that contract. So the husband and the wife have an obligation, and they're legally bound to maintain status quo, not make any changes to any of their marital assets while they're going through the process. So the protections that somebody feels they're getting if they file with court, they're also getting when they sign the participation agreement.
See, that's interesting. Well, just as an initial reaction, I mean, it seems like, of course, knowing about the collaborative option is important, but also kind of trusting, right, or sort of like feeling, I don't know, confident or hopeful that that could be like a good outcome, right? I mean, if a person's anxious or worried or scared, or they don't know how it's going to go, kind of getting on board with, oh, this could be like a better process or have better outcomes, there's probably some, I don't know, maybe initial hesitation there. Sometimes, I don't know. What do you see like in your work? How do people go about that, or how do they? It sounds really appealing from like a conceptual point of view.
Right. So that's a very good point, because when I talk to people who are exploring the options, most everybody wants to use the collaborative process. People don't want to engage in an adversarial process in court, most people. But, people go with what they know because they're so much more comfortable with it.
Sure.
And they're trusting a process that they've heard all of the horror stories about, right? Like, do you know anybody who's not heard of a bad outcome based on a court-based divorce?
Right.
But people are, and I did recently write a blog on this, why are people so quick to trust the court-based process and a stranger, because you are assigned a judge and a friend of the court referee and a friend of the court child specialist who you have no knowledge of? You don't get to interview them first, versus a collaborative process where you not only choose your attorney, but you choose the people that you're going to work with. You can interview the child specialist who's working with you on the case, and the divorce coach, who's the mental health professional who's working with you on the case, and decide if they're a good fit. So once people find out about it, and and again, I really do think also that it's the way that the information is presented that can make a big difference initially with a client who's trying to make those decisions.
Yeah,
Can they feel confident in the process based on the information that they're getting?
for sure. That's interesting. One more kind of just initial question. What about, divorce is complex in many ways, but one of the aspects is financial, right? Which you had mentioned. Um, is there like a financial difference in terms of collaborative versus litigation based? If I'm a consumer of divorce, so to speak, if I'm choosing which way to pursue my divorce, and I know it's going to involve many different changes, including financial responsibilities or costs, is the collaborative approach, uh, how do we think about that in terms of like
The cost,
time, money, costs? Yeah.
right? It's a very big consideration. So the costs are comparable.
Hmm.
The cost of divorce, the difference between a very expensive divorce and a not so expensive divorce are the people involved.
Hmm.
So how much are they arguing? How much are they getting along? And the collaborative process starts out, right? You have at a minimum 4 different team members who everybody has their hourly rate.
Sure.
But in traditional litigation, I am, as the attorney, collecting all of the financial information, handling a lot of emotional aspects of the divorce that my client is dealing with. This difference is that I have a specialist on board. I have a financial neutral who's usually a certified divorce financial analyst who the couple are meeting with separately from the attorney, separately from a group meeting, and providing the financial neutral with all of the financial information that we need in a divorce.
Hmm.
So we all need the same information in that divorce.
Sure.
Instead of sending out what we call discovery, formal discovery in a case, and hoping that we're asking the right question and getting that information, you've already signed a contract that you are going to disclose that information, and our financial neutral is going to collect that information for you for both attorneys. So instead of separate attorneys doing
Sure.
that work, you have one professional collecting all of that information, and she's a specialist helping us analyze that information as we need it as it pertains to the divorce situation itself. And the
You
same
know,
with the divorce coach.
yeah.
Very often there are child-related issues that come up, or different issues in communication that rear their ugly head during a meeting.
Hmm.
Our divorce coach can address that with the couple, with the parties who are getting divorced,
Yeah,
instead of 2 attorneys doing it separately and saying different things.
for sure.
So
As a
that's why the cost can be compared. It can be it's very comparable,
Yeah.
and also just the future. We see a lot of post-judgment arguments that arise
Hmm.
when you go through a collaborative divorce process. There are far fewer issues that arise later that you and your former spouse cannot resolve on your own. And if you can't resolve it on your own, you already have resources you can turn to try to resolve them.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's really interesting. Bill, what were we gonna say?
I was just going to say, as someone who has been a bystander to all different uh, types of divorce with all different types of processes and outcomes, one thing I do come away from that experience with is the idea that collaboration and efficiency really make a difference. It's just better for everybody. It's better for finances. It's better for the mental health of the children and the parties involved. Collaboration and efficiency in getting this accomplished with minimal distress is really good for everybody. It's a win-win for everybody.
Right. And sometimes you hear people who are like, well, this is going to be a simple divorce. We don't have a lot of assets. There's nothing really for us to argue about. We already agree on all of these things. What people forget about is what they don't know.
Yeah.
And those are the people who go through a simple divorce and without going through a process where they are disclosing information or discussing something with an attorney, end up in court in protracted litigation later. I've seen that
Hmm.
time and again,
Hmm.
right? People just want to get it over with. They just want to get it over with. Let's just go. But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
It's really interesting. Now, so I know we kind of have like a sort of list of questions. One of the questions I wanted to that Bill, I think this sort of comes from, I think this is a question you added here. Um, when you talk to a couple or an individual and you're moving your practice in the direction of collaborative divorce, I can understand, I can appreciate the rationale for it. It sounds like a better, more helpful, thoughtful process. But is there an assessment initially or throughout of is this couple a good fit for this model, right? Because it's like we, at our office, we do a lot of educational stuff, groups, meetings, case conferences, and one of them is on couples therapy. And in couples, like you have to kind of assess what strengths and vulnerabilities does a couple bring to if it's couples therapy. Well, how are they able to use the couples therapy? How motivated are? What are their motivations? How is the process? Right? I mean, I know it's different, but I'm just wondering. When you talk with somebody, or it's like I could say, for example, I'm a trained psychoanalyst, so when I see a patient, I'm thinking about their challenges primarily from like my professional lens. I appreciate other therapeutic approaches. I'm mindful of them, but I have a particular way that I typically work, right? So I'm just curious, how do you either how does the couple themselves make that assessment, or how does the attorney help them think through, is this kind of the right, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but like, is this the right fit for me,
Right. And I will say when collaborative divorce, the process first came to Michigan, the small group who were trained, we weren't that great at evaluating
Hmm.
our clients, but over the last 20 years, we've gotten much better because you're right, there are some people who are not fit for this process because you have to be fully committed
Hmm.
to the process and not always have one foot outside with a different attorney who you could get, hire, or listening to a litigation attorney who says, well, that's not how it would go if you went to court. Not that anybody really can predict how it would go if you went to court, but not have somebody else in your ear, whispering in your ear. So I would say with the additional training and our experience over the years, most clients, as long as we're using the full team process with the
Sure.
mental health professional and the financial neutral, and especially the mental health professional, the divorce coach. So many people, clients, they think they can leave that person out of the mix, but that person is critical to a successful collaborative divorce process.
Hmm.
And one of the ways that we are able to screen out people who wouldn't be a good fit is because one of the first things that we do is have the clients meet with the divorce coach, and the divorce coach, with your skills, your analytical skills, and talking to both parties, because right, as the attorney, I've only talked to one party, I've only heard one party's story. But the divorce coach, who is a neutral, talking to both people, might find that this is a red flag.
Hmm.
I don't think we should engage in this process. It will not be successful. And I've had that happen,
Sure.
that after somebody has retained me for the collaborative process and we begin and they meet um, with the divorce coach, they find that the divorce coach raises some red flags. Sometimes we don't listen to the divorce coach because we're so sure we can, like, the process can help people, and it certainly can, but at least recognizing that there are going to be certain obstacles and challenges through the collaborative process that we as a team have to figure out how to overcome, and we can overcome those things.
Mm.
Some people would say like, oh, domestic violence or working with a narcissist, those cases you don't want to do in a collaborative situation. I would agree mostly with domestic violence where there has been violence and it has been physical, and that you cannot engage in the same room together because that's
Sure.
a cornerstone of the process. You have to be able to sit in the conference room with the other spouse.
For sure.
That wouldn't be a good case for it. But if it's emotional, financial abuse that we're looking at, then I choose the mental health professional who I know recognizes these situations and can help this couple. How much better is it to provide the support with a trained mental health professional who understands the signs of financial abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and can work with the communication skills of the other person and help support the person who is feeling that kind of verbal abuse. So
Yeah.
that's how I go
Sure.
about with my evaluation, as long as I learn about it in those initial interviews.
Mhm.
Yeah, that and I mean, one thing I was thinking about is what an interesting opportunity. Sometimes we have mental health professionals who join the podcast who listen in. Well, what an interesting opportunity also for mental health professionals who want to help people and want to maybe help couples or want to help improve family dynamics or parent-child type relationships. This is such an interesting avenue of further training and learning. If somebody could learn these processes and become, good at them and kind of knowledgeable, they could be part of the collaborative team in a very productive way where they're making a real difference. Things that would typically be
Mhm.
destructive or maybe hostile, potential, or somehow
Right.
non-collaborative, they could make a real difference in terms of assessment, communication. Like such a what a cool kind of professional opportunity also sort of for the mental health on the mental health side.
Yes, and having the divorce coach in the room during our meetings, during our team meetings,
Mm,
that divorce coach is staying attuned to people's body language,
mm,
to the words they're using, and can help reduce or um, or reframe or redirect people to kind of keep the cool in the room.
Mhm.
One of the misconceptions about the collaborative divorce process is that it's everybody's getting along because it's collaborative.
right, right, right.
And really, you guys can help me. Like, people are getting divorced. You
Right.
disagree on things, and really deep, maybe your values are different, and so you're going to disagree in the collaborative conference room. We have the tools to get through that conflict. How many times are people in conflict just walking away instead of sitting in the room in
Yeah.
that uncomfortable situation and working through that disagreement, right? Conflict is very uncomfortable. But with that divorce coach, excuse me, in the room, we have an extra tool and skills, the skill set that we need to work through that conflict while
Sure.
supporting our clients.
Um,
And I will say, like you said, it's an opportunity for mental health professionals. Yes, the training the initial introductory training that is offered through the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals or the Collaborative Professionals Institute of Michigan. One is the international community, the other is our Michigan State community. The training is multidisciplinary. So the training is conducted by an attorney, a mental health professional, and a financial neutral. So
mm,
everybody's learning the same thing with certain breakout sessions so that based on the person's expertise, where you can share one-on-one certain situations to be aware of. So yeah, absolutely. And really bringing more people and making more people aware of it, even if you only do the introductory training to have the information to pass on to your clients and don't do any of the advanced training that is available,
Yeah.
you at least have that basis of knowledge. And attorneys can turn to you to join a case if that's the way you want to take your practice or something you want to add to your practice as a mental health professional. It it's so meaningful. Like Dr. Bloom, I think you said before, you want to help people and you want to make it a meaning. You want to have meaning for your clients.
One of the things that you said, Alyssa, that really struck home to me as I'm thinking through this is the process of collaborative divorce actually can potentially teach skills that will serve the families well after the resolution of the divorce. And that's not something I think you could say about divorce that goes through litigation.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why, if you're doing a cost comparative sometimes, the process might take a little longer because you're scheduling 4 or 5 different people's calendars together.
Right.
And you're sitting in the room with conflict. You're not just drafting a motion and going to court and getting a decision. But the future, right? How you're going to conduct yourselves in the future, especially when you have children or grandchildren, a whole new dynamic.
Right.
You want to be able to feel joyous at those events with your former spouse.
Yeah.
And the parent of your children or the grandparent. It just makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
Such a big difference. Even with the best of intention, when you go through litigation, you are inevitably scarred by the process. And you may have the best intentions to not carry resentment into the future, but there are a lot of unresolved issues when you go through litigation.
Yeah.
It's one observation I was just kind of thinking about what you're saying, Alisa, that our society these days, there's a very strong kind of promotional marketing effort on wellness. Everybody's a wellness professional. Even my company's called Start My Wellness, right? Everything's about wellness. You drive down the street, there's dental wellness, orthopedic wellness, divorce wellness. I mean, we're so wellness oriented.
Right.
And on the
Yeah.
one hand, that's great and very positive, but I think you're describing the equally important part of wellness, which is how do we deal with conflict? How do we deal with difficulties? How do we deal with disagreement? How do we find common ground or at least reasonable resolutions? Part of wellness isn't only about enjoying the good life and the good moments and I mean, that's great, and we all want to do that and want to do that. But what about the challenging, not so pleasant or easy moments of conflict, disagreement? We're kind of, because we're sort of talking about two topics. There's the actual kind of divorce process, but then there's the emotional, psychological, meaning making that goes on, right? So I'm curious, that I
Right.
think you're kind of talking about
Mhm.
conflict resolution or conversation is also a hugely important skill that we're always,
Right.
whether it's during a collaborative divorce or in general, we want to be learning and getting better at.
Right. And that's why um, I've, in my litigation practice, many of my colleagues would say, why are you still doing litigation? And I always felt that my litigation clients still deserved somebody who understood all of these other aspects about the divorce process and could support them through that,
Sure.
to transition through that stage of life and get to the other side in a much better position, maintaining their dignity through it. because things don't always go the way you want them to go. But now that I'm making this pivot
Yeah.
to not doing the litigation, it is partly for me because I don't want to deal with the kinds of attorneys that I've been dealing with a lot more lately. Since after COVID, more people, there are so much more court and negotiating that is done via Zoom,
Mm.
not in person. And it makes a big difference if you're sitting in the room together or if
Mm.
you're in the courtroom. So people are very comfortable litigating because they're doing it from their living room instead of being at the courthouse. So the level of the number of cases going to trial or the court's involvement has grown.
Mm.
And even the attorneys' lack of seeing each other in court and being able to build camaraderie, there aren't enough opportunities for that unless you are committed to the networking that's involved, like even in the collaborative process, in collaborative lawyers, we get together monthly,
Yeah.
build trust between each other. That's what's behind the scenes that the clients don't really know about. But we're building trust with each other so that we are a group of attorneys who know we can trust each other.
Mm.
You don't get that when you go into the courtroom. And so now I am going to focus on those clients who can trust these alternative processes. And I also think that younger people don't want to go to court. They're more open to sitting in a room and having a conversation, right? So many dynamics have changed with people getting married later, people going through divorce at a later age, gray divorce for people over 50 years old. So it's not unusual to have 70-year-olds who are getting divorced. There's so many different aspects to that after living a life together. And that you can honor that. And I can tell my clients, you can honor that. And one way to honor it is to know that in the future, like that part of your life existed and it was important to you at the time. And things are different now, but moving into the future, you can still honor that past and the children that you have together and the grandchildren you had together by working things out so that you're both satisfied, feeling secure in the end.
Um, Very rich kind of topic. Bill,
Yeah.
any questions for you? Any kind of I really appreciate how much thoughtfulness you have about this topic. At least you know
Thank you.
it's really such a so many different things involved to kind of pay attention to, be aware of, be thought, right? It's quite appealing.
It
Yeah.
really is at such a difficult time in life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I do have a question about um, the kids when there are children involved. In traditional litigation cases that I've been involved with as a psychologist, the issue of guardianship is something that is frequently part of litigation, and just a traumatic experience for everybody. And I'm wondering, um, are there serious concerns about guardianship that arise also in collaborative models of divorce? And are they typically resolved in a similar way by doing guardianship evaluations of all the parties and children?
There could be. I haven't had any of those concerns because guardianship is a completely different area than the divorce process, even
Right.
when we're working with children, because guardianship of a child would come under the probate court. But we can use the same process that we use for divorce. We could help parents with the communication and the decision making that needs to take
Okay.
place in a guardianship matter, as long as we retain the right professionals, right? The right to follow the law that is required and those resources that are available for a guardianship situation. So in estate planning or estate, I'm not the estate planning, but estate litigation, instead of litigating because it's a family, you're still dealing with a family who's probate litigation, who's arguing over how the estate is being divided. It's a contested will, let's say. Using the collaborative model where you're using the attorneys and a mental health professional who understands those family dynamics that are going on can be very helpful. And we do have people mostly out in California, out west, who are using the collaborative process in their probate practices.
I see that as such a big advantage because children are sometimes so prone to feel like they have to take sides. And that's never a good place for kids to be.
No.
And if they can sense that, and I do and thank you for clarifying that for me because it is a different legal process. And I wasn't thinking, but you're right, obviously you're right. But extending it to issues of visitation and guardianship and all, and that collaborative approach there can have so much benefit for kids as opposed to seeing the world as black and white and mom versus dad and whose side do I have to be on? And it's just a mess.
Right. It really, it's very harmful for children.
Yeah,
And I'm involved right now in a case, it's post-divorce, and the one parent wants more parenting time, wants to
right.
take parenting time away from the other parent, and seeing what the clients are spending on a protracted litigation in this case, and I've seen it time and again, and I know that there is a better way for people, for them to have even taken their very different values and their very different parenting styles into a different process where
Right.
instead of hurting the other person, because their relationship, the parents' relationship, will never be the same after this.
Yeah.
And it's not good for the children. The children, even if they don't know what's going on, they know. You don't have to say anything. They can sense a shift in the relationship
Absolutely.
between
Absolutely.
their already divorced parents.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Are there things that you see happening sort of on an emotional level that you notice, common themes or challenges? Because, we, as a therapist, like it's interesting, you hear stories about how a person's divorce is going or their interaction after a divorce, or there's so many different dynamics there. I'm just curious, I guess one very positive thing about the collaborative model is that the goal is to try to be direct and address and include these things as part of the divorce, right? You're not sort of saying, okay, deal with that later, or don't deal
Right.
with it, or don't think about it. Um, I'm just wondering, like, what kind of things do you see, or what are some of the challenges that are faced by people, and how do they try to resolve them, or how do they work to resolve them? It might be
So,
a broad question, but just curious, sort of.
well, yeah, relating directly to the issues in divorce. So property division, a parenting time schedule, what spousal support, relating to those issues in particular. The issues can be, it's very hard, I would say, when I think about property settlements. Often people come in with separate property. So property that they came into the marriage with, or property that they inherited. So those can be big issues, especially if the couple, while they were married, looked at the inherited property as theirs, not as mine or yours.
Mm.
And then they step into divorce, and all of a sudden it's not ours, it's mine. That is a huge shift that people have to make when they go through divorce.
Mm.
And I feel in a collaborative setting, in the collaborative room, we know what the law says, and we always bring that law into the room. But now let's hear what from each of you about your perception and what you understood and how it will affect your future.
Mm.
And
Wow.
if your values were to make sure that we're both in a secure financial situation when we leave, but we didn't save for retirement because we were counting on this inheritance, and in the collaborative setting, the couple know what the law is, but they're more comfortable sharing the truth of, yes, we looked at it that way, and so letting them work through, well, how does that look in the future? That's the biggest issue, I think, where you can take a different consideration in the collaborative room versus in litigation.
Mm.
And for children, understanding, like if you're walking in the room with a 2 and a 5-year-old, and being able to talk about, okay, they're 2 and 5 now. Realistically, yes, mom has been the one staying at home and taking care of them. To shift them to an automatic 50-50 parenting time, maybe the mom and dad feel that their kids are good for that. And then it's very client-focused decision-making process. And they know their kids best. If they feel that they can do that shift right away, great. But if one parent has concerns about it, which I would say most parents who've been staying at home have a concern about the shift to an automatic 50-50, you can have that conversation in the room. And so even if you start out feeling resentful because you're going to be sharing custody equally, you have time and you can go through the process that you need to go through to
Mm.
understand why, if it's a benefit for the kids, or if it's going to be a benefit for the kids, or if you have these concerns because you haven't seen your spouse, helping with homework or cooking meals. Well, let's talk about what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
It gives them that opportunity so that's why people can feel better about their outcomes.
Mm. Because as you're figuring out the practical, very, very kind of the changes, you're also talking, discussing, the person is expressing their concerns, feelings, they're kind of talking it out as the process is going on. It's not just in their mind, or they're just experiencing it, they're kind of trying to actively, I don't know,
Right. To
discuss it
process
or
it. So when they're in conflict, it's so often based on fear
yeah,
or what they don't know.
for sure.
So if somebody is saying, no, I'm not going to pay you spousal support, despite the disparity in our incomes, why? What's underlying that? Because at one time they did love each other, and so often it's a fear or an insecurity about what their own future looks like. So we can
Let's see.
help that person understand, look at the real finances that are involved, and what the finances of your spouse are going to be in the future. They might not be happy that they're paying spousal support in the end, but they understand it better and the reasons why they are.
Such a rich, I mean, I feel a bit, we committed an hour to this conversation. I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface of such a rich topic. Um, well, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but one is how help, I really appreciate your time, Lisa, because this is very, very useful information. And because we're recording it and we're gonna, share it with our communities, I think it gives a much more in-depth and nuanced perspective of the options and the possibilities about divorce and kind of outcomes. So that's by itself is very, very helpful. Um, is there anything kind of crucial that maybe we didn't ask you about? Something that you think is really important? Like, obviously, if somebody really is going to get divorced, they should probably, they should reach out to you or like a colleague like that, really explore their options, understand, maybe talk with their spouse. I don't know, there's steps they should take, right? But anything that's kind of crucial that maybe we haven't yet touched on today that you think the listener should be kind of aware of.
So, yeah, I think it's important for people to know who are going through divorce that building your team of professionals is very important. So that even if you are in litigation, that doesn't mean you can't hire
Mm,
a certified divorce financial analyst, for instance, who's going to help you with the process, or um, be in therapy if you're not already in therapy. Have a therapist who understands what you're going through to help
yeah.
you through the divorce process. A neutral, somebody who's going to support you and help you through that process. A mental health professional who is knowledgeable about the different issues that arise in divorce and can
Mm,
help you through that. So you can still have those resources
yeah.
that are built into the collaborative process. And also, people should know that however they go about, they choose or they're able to go through divorce. Um, the collaborative divorce process sounds may sound expensive, depending on how it's presented, and
Hmm.
may sound like it's going to take longer. But if it does, you at least know that up front, and you have a process that I urge people to trust,
Yeah.
because if the collaborative process is taking longer, for sure your litigation is going to take that much longer and be that much more expensive. You're going to double your time, double your own stress, and double the expense that you're spending in litigation, because those same issues that arise in the collaborative conference room are going to arise in a litigation in the courtroom. But the resources that we have as collaborative professionals to help you resolve those issues is going to last through your next phase of life and hopefully through your lifetime. You're
Sure.
not going to get any of those skills by going through litigation. It's just going to be done and over, and you're going to carry the hurt, the resentment, the scars, the battlefield scars through the rest of your life and the relationships that you have in the future. And
Right. And
collaborative offers you a much better way for your future.
yeah, and of course nobody, if a person's getting divorced, they don't know what if they're doing the litigation route, they can't anticipate of, okay, it's going to cost me this much, or I'm going to be hurt. Like it's hard to anticipate all those things, but the collaborative process sort of accounts for the challenges along the way and tries to kind of be prepared ahead of time and work through them as a team versus let's just see what happens and deal with it, along
Right,
the way.
right. We know there are going to be challenges, and we're
Mm,
telling you that up front. And we're telling you, yes, we'll use the divorce coach and the financial neutral as much as we need to, or as little as we need to. But at least you'll be dealing with those. We know we are going to face those issues in the collaborative process, and we can anticipate those things.
well,
The
Bill, go
I
ahead.
know we're running out of time. I just have one final thought, and that is the first time an individual might voice the idea that they're considering divorce is frequently to their mental health professional. Before they tell anyone else, it's frequently
Yeah,
the mental health professional. And as a profession, we ourselves need to be more educated about this process. Not that
Yeah.
we make decisions for our patients, we don't, but it's important that we know the various options available.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a really good point, Bill, because for sure, one of our goals is we're trying to, Alisa, actually, I remember when we met a number of years ago, I believe you mentioned this to me that one of the ways you work as a professional is you like having like sort of a list, a roster, a kind of a contacts, people that can help with different things, kind of like we're talking today.
Yes.
And the same is true for us. We would like the kind of the person in the community, whether they're a mental health professional or somebody who's, dealing with some of these challenges, to know what the resources are, right? To have the ability to reach out, ask questions, know that there are options. That kind of information could be super valuable. It could make a big difference in terms of what decisions they make, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right. And
um,
I've done in-service for different clinics. And actually, Anton, when you and I first met, you were just starting out, right? It
that's
was
right,
before you had a clinic.
for sure,
And but you knew how you wanted to grow. And so having, you know, that's how you know me, right? We were talking about our respective practices
that's right,
and having you as a resource over the years and as you've grown and being able to, now you have this podcast and this is recorded, it can be shared.
that's right,
Um, you have a large clinic now that you are the CEO of, and now we're both entrepreneurs, and continuing to build our resources like this is so important. I'm happy to be a resource for any of the
sure.
therapists in your clinic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. We will. I think what we will probably what I'd love to do is we'll add kind of your contact information so that a person watching this could reach out to you and, if, whether a therapist or somebody else, right, if they have a question, I think that could be very valuable for them to know how to get in touch and what next steps to take, or at least if they have some questions, right? And for us, the same thing, I know that Bill and I often take phone calls and inquiries. Somebody will say, I don't know if I need help or what kind of help, or, a lot of times people don't know when it comes to mental health as well what avenue to pursue or what kind of help do they need. So I appreciate, it's great to see you. I appreciate your time and I hope we can keep the conversation going about these important matters and helping this information be accessible, to people in our community. So
Yes, I would love to, and to get more of your therapists involved in the collaborative law process
yeah,
through training. I'll share that information with you as well.
sure, sure.
And
Great.
I'm yeah, I'm very much um, hopeful for our future,
Sure.
where people can learn really to communicate better with each other, and know that there will be conflict, and really know how to get through the conflict, work through the conflict in a productive way.
For sure. No, I totally agree. Thank you so much, Elise. It's great to see you. Thank you
Thank
for your
Thank
you.
time.
you. Thank you.
Um,
I'll see you guys soon.
okay,
Okay.
take care.
Bye.
Take care.